she said. You're nobody, and you'll never be anybody. The door slammed and the sound echoed longer than it should have. It wasn't just a door closing, it was a chapter ending. I stood there in the tiny apartment we once called ours. The walls looked bigger now, emptier. Her perfume still lingered in the air, mixed with the smell of instant noodles and failure. My wallet had $3. My rent was overdue. And the only thing heavier than the silence was my pride. For days I replayed her words like a broken record. You'll never be anybody. At first I hated her for saying it, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized she wasn't cursing me. She was challenging me. So I made a decision. If the world was going to see me as nothing, then I'd start from nothing. The next morning I packed a single backpack. One change of clothes, a half-empty notebook, and an old phone with a cracked screen. I walked out of that apartment, left the key on the counter, and promised myself one thing. I'm not coming back until I make something out of this pain. That was the day everything changed. I slept on a friend's couch for a week. No job. No income. Just a dream too big to fit in that tiny living room. While everyone else scrolled through their phones, I watched videos on how to start a business with no money, how to sell, how to build, how to grow. At first, nothing worked. My pitches failed. My emails were ignored. I was laughed at more times than I can count. But failure is a strange thing. If you listen carefully, it teaches you more than success ever could. On the 11th day, something clicked. I noticed people on the street rushing every morning holding coffee cups. So I went to the nearest cafe and asked the owner if I could help hand out flyers. He said no, until I offered to do it for free. I spent 8 hours standing outside, smiling, talking, freezing in the cold. At the end of the day, he handed me $20 and a sandwich. It wasn't much, but to me it was everything. Because that night I didn't just earn money. I earned momentum. I started studying every night until 3 a.m. Marketing, psychology, storytelling. Anything that could help me understand people, because that's how you understand business. I didn't have mentors or investors. I had Google and grit. Within a month, I was helping small cafes and street vendors run their social media, taking photos, writing captions. I didn't even have a laptop. I did everything from that cracked phone. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't fast, but it was mine. 2 months later, I got my first client who paid me $200. I remember staring at that notification for 5 minutes straight, heart pounding. That $200 wasn't profit. It was proof. Proof that pain can be fuel, if you know how to burn it right. I bought a second-hand laptop with half the money, invested the rest into learning more. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Every night, when I felt like giving up, I'd hear her voice again. You'll never be anybody. And every single time I'd smile and whisper back, watch me. 1 year later, I walked past the same cafe where I once handed out flyers for free. But this time, I wasn't handing anything out. I was meeting the owner to talk about expanding his brand online. He didn't even recognize me. That's when I realized I'd become someone even I wouldn't have recognized a year ago. I didn't get revenge by proving her wrong. I got revenge by proving myself right. Because success isn't about money. It's about turning pain into purpose. It's about falling apart and building again, stronger, wiser, hungrier. And if she ever sees me now, I hope she understands. She didn't leave a loser behind. She created a fighter. 3 years later, everything looked different. My name wasn't big, but it was known. I had clients, a small team, and an office that smelled like ambition and late nights. The same city that once swallowed me now echoed with my footsteps. I used to walk these streets invisible. Now people stop me to ask for advice. But success comes quietly. There's no applause, just the sound of your own breath when you realize you made it out. That night I was sitting in a cafe, laptop open, working on a new deal, when a voice behind me froze my entire body. Do you mind if I sit here? I looked up. It was her. The same eyes, the same tone, but different energy. Her confidence was cracked, like a mirror that had been dropped too many times. She didn't recognize me at first. Not with the suit. Not with the posture. Not with the silence that replaced my old nervousness. I smiled slightly. Sure. Go ahead. She sat across from me, not realizing who I was until she looked closer. Her jaw dropped. Wait, it's you. Yeah, I said calmly. It's me. The pause between us was heavier than any argument we'd ever had. The cafe noise faded. She looked nervous, maybe even sorry. I heard you started your own thing, she said. Yeah. It's been going well. She nodded, biting her lip. I'm happy for you. But her eyes said something else, regret. I wanted to tell her everything, how her words pushed me, how her leaving built me, how I used her doubt as fuel every single day. But I didn't. Instead, I just said, you were right. I was nobody. Back then. She looked down, ashamed. I didn't mean. It's okay, I interrupted. You were honest, and that honesty changed everything. We talked for a bit. About work. About life. She told me she'd quit her job, moved around, tried to find herself. But as she spoke, I realized something important. She was still searching for the thing I'd already found. When I stood up to leave, she looked up at me like she wanted to say something. Instead, she just asked quietly, do you ever think about us? I smiled. Not out of ego, but gratitude. Every day, I said. Because without us, there wouldn't be me. And I walked away. Outside, the cold air hit my face. I stood there for a moment, looking up at the skyline, the same one that used to make me feel small. Now it felt like a reflection of everything I'd built. People think success is about revenge. It's not. True revenge is silence. It's peace. It's walking past the person who doubted you, and realizing you don't need to prove a thing. Because when she left, I thought I'd lost everything. But in truth, that's when I finally found myself. The city looked different now. Same streets, same people, but from the top of the glass tower, everything seemed smaller. Ethan stood by the window of his corner office, watching the morning fog curl between skyscrapers like ghosts of his past. His phone buzzed with notifications, emails, contracts, deals worth millions, but for the first time in years he didn't feel the need to answer right away. Because today wasn't about business. Today was personal. He had built everything from nothing. After the crash, after the heartbreak, after being left for dead, he clawed his way back, one sleepless night at a time. Every "you'll never make it" became a spark that fueled the fire inside him. And now, standing where no one believed he'd ever stand, he could almost taste the irony. But success, he learned, doesn't erase pain. It just gives it sharper edges. He turned from the window and opened the small safe hidden behind a shelf. Inside, next to the first $100 he ever made from his new company, was a photograph, old, faded, cracked at the corners. Him and her. Back when they still believed in forever. He hadn't looked at it in years. Not because he forgot, but because he didn't want to remember. He slipped the photo into his jacket pocket and walked out. The restaurant was expensive, the kind of place people booked months in advance. The kind of place where everyone pretended to be happy. When he entered, every head turned. The suit. The calm eyes. The aura of someone who had nothing left to prove. At a corner table, she was already waiting. Samantha. The woman who once promised she'd stand by him when he had nothing, and left when he did. She looked up and froze. Ethan? She whispered, almost not believing it was him. He smiled, that same quiet smile that used to melt her. But now it held something else. Something unreadable. I wasn't sure you'd come, she said, her voice trembling slightly. I wasn't sure you'd remember me, he replied. They sat. The silence between them was heavy, filled with everything they never said. She tried to speak first. You look different. So do you, he said. Life tends to change people. She glanced at the waiter, then back at him. I heard about your company. The investments. The interviews. You've done incredibly well. He leaned back, eyes calm. You sound surprised. I'm not, she lied. I always knew you had potential. He chuckled. No, you didn't. If you did, you wouldn't have left when I needed you the most. Her eyes dropped to the table. I made a mistake, Ethan. I was scared. I didn't think you'd survive after the crash, after everything. But I did, he interrupted. His tone was soft, but his words were knives. And maybe that's what you can't handle. She looked up, tears forming. You don't understand? No, he said quietly. I understand perfectly. You left because it was easier. You didn't believe in me. You didn't believe I could be more than what I was. He reached into his jacket, pulled out the photo and placed it on the table. The same picture they took before it all went wrong. I kept this, he said. Not because I missed you, but because it reminded me of the moment I decided never to need anyone again. She stared at it, speechless. Why show me this now? Because I wanted you to see what happens when the one you broke learns how to rebuild himself, without you. That night, Ethan drove to the old neighborhood. The streets were darker, smaller than he remembered. The corner store where he used to buy coffee was closed. The mechanic shop where he worked for minimum wage was gone. And yet, standing there, it felt like the ghosts of his past were still watching. He walked to the same alley where years ago he'd sat alone after losing everything. His job, his home, his love. That was where the idea for his company was born. That was where Ethan Carter the dreamer died, and Ethan Carter the wolf was born. He smiled faintly. "You did good," he whispered to the old version of himself. "You didn't quit." A car stopped behind him. The headlights cut through the fog. He turned around slowly and froze. It was them. The same faces from the crash. The ones who'd been drinking, laughing, and never paid for what they did. They stepped out, older now but still with that same arrogance. "Well, if it isn't the miracle man," one of them said, smirking. "Didn't think you'd still remember us." "Oh, I remember everything," Ethan said quietly. They laughed. "What, you gonna call your lawyers?" "We already paid our fines, man. It's over." Ethan stepped forward, eyes cold as steel. "No," he said. "It's just beginning." The air went heavy. None of them were laughing anymore. He didn't raise a hand. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. "I don't want your money. I don't want revenge," he said. "I want you to live every day remembering the man you left to die, and realizing that while you wasted your lives running from your guilt, I built an empire out of mine." He turned, walked back to his car, and disappeared into the night, leaving them in silence, staring at the man they once destroyed. Later that night, back in his penthouse, Ethan poured himself a glass of whiskey and sat on the balcony. Below, the city glittered like a sea of broken dreams, and he realized something. He didn't need to forgive them. He didn't even need to hate them anymore, because they were stuck in the past, and he had already moved far beyond it. He pulled out his phone and opened a message draft. The contact name was Samantha. He typed, "Thank you for not believing in me. You made me find out who I really am." He stared at it for a long moment, then deleted it. Instead, he turned off the phone, leaned back, and watched the sunrise paint the city gold. The fire inside him was still there, but now it burned steady, no longer for revenge but for purpose. The wolf had returned. And this time he wasn't hunting. He was leading the pack.